Great, thanks, Sanjay. Okay, well, I think we're just past 10 a.m, so I'm going to make a start. Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here and welcome to this. It's our first day of our Kickstarter event in the run-up to our upcoming funding call. I'm Oli, I'm one of the grants managers here at the Dunhill Medical Trust, and also with me today from the trust team, we've got Sanjay, our head of research policy and awards, and we've also got Gordon, our other grants manager. Hopefully you can see them both there, and we'll be sort of generally floating around today, so hopefully you'll get the chance to see us and speak to all of us. And we're also going to be joined shortly as well by Tim, who's the sort of overall facilitator for both days of this Kickstarter event. For those of you who don't know much about us here at the Dunhill Medical Trust, we are an independently endowed charitable foundation, and our primary focus is on supporting funding into healthy aging and improving the health and social care for older people. And we give about £5 million of grant funding a year. So I guess we're a relatively small fish in the kind of pond that is the health funding landscape, but we're probably the only funder which is specifically focused on older people and research into healthy aging. In the summer of 2020, we launched our new strategic framework. And one of the things this does is sets out our research priorities for the next 5 years. And I've highlighted these here in this box. And there's one which very obviously links to this specific funding call, which is research into addressing issues of age-related vision, hearing and oral health. So obviously two of those aspects of vision and hearing are directly addressed by this funding call. But I hope you can see that there's other priorities here that have sort of related links to this funding call. So developing and delivering suitable living environments, targeting the social determinants of healthy life expectancy, and research which has the potential to prevent, delay or reduce future health and social care requirements and improve the functional ability of older adults. So hopefully that just gives you a sense of where this funding call sits within our kind of general strategic framework. The other thing that we set out in that strategic framework was our principles. So these are the principles that we expect all of the research we fund to uphold. You can see these all listed here, and I just want to sort of highlight a couple that are relevant to this funding call and that we will expect proposals to be addressing. So we expect the involvement and engagement of older people in the research that we fund, and for patient care and public involvement, or PPIE, to be considered in the development of the proposal and the research itself. Similarly, we expect the consideration of equity, diversity and inclusion, so EDI, in the development of the proposal and in the research itself. Where possible and where applicable, we're looking for people to be taking a multidisciplinary approach to the research that they're funding. And we also want to see a commitment to capacity building and career development in the field of aging related research during the research and after it as well. So I just want to highlight those now just to give you a sense of them, and they're going to sort of link back to something that I'm going to talk about in a later presentation as well. But I think now let's turn to the sort of main event, the reason that we're here. So our next themed research funding call is around addressing age-related issues of hearing and or vision through healthcare technologies. And with this call, what we're really looking is proposals which go beyond simply uncovering the biological mechanisms of age-related hearing and vision conditions, and which are instead focusing on ways to address them or to support people living with them by testing and or scaling up healthcare technologies. So this could include developing and testing of new technologies or the scaling up of existing technologies. But what's really key here is that testing and or scaling up element. That's what we're really looking to come through in proposals. And I think that's why the call lends itself so well to healthcare technologies. So there's really there's the age-related hearing and or vision angle, there's the healthcare technologies angle, and there's the testing and or scaling up angle. And that's what we're looking for. If you've read the pre-announcement, which we've got available on our website, then you'll have seen that we've identified a number of priority research topics that fit within this overall call, and these are listed here. And all proposals must address at least one of those topics in order to be eligible for funding. Just on the topic of healthcare technology, I think it's important to note that healthcare technologies are slightly broader than what we might consider technology in a sort of traditional sense. So we've said that they can include, but they're not limited to, things like therapeutics, medical technologies, devices, digital tools, software, and products for consumer health. So the sort of term healthcare technology or healthcare technologies encompasses quite a broad range of things that proposals could be focused on. Hopefully that provides a bit of a sneak peek to the funding call, and I'm going to be giving a bit more of an in-depth walkthrough of the funding call a little bit later. But I thought it would be good just to end for now by summarising why we're here and what we hope that you'll get out of the Kickstarter event. And just a reminder that this is a 2-day event. So this is the first day. The second day will be on Thursday, and Sanjay will be mentioning later that there's still time to register for the second day if you're interested. So we want you to have an introduction to the call and an opportunity to ask questions. We're really glad and we're really appreciative that we're going to be joined by Professor Andy Clegg and Dr. Oli Soutar later on, and they're going to be talking about some of the aspects of what makes a good application and what we're looking for in proposals, specifically focusing on those 3 points there. So applying the gerontological lens, writing a strong method sections, and the importance of PPI in proposals. We're also really delighted that we're going to be joined by representatives from Fight for Sight, the Royal Academy of Engineering, and RNID, it's the Royal National Institute for Deaf People, to talk about some of their related funding opportunities, just so that you get a really good sense of the funding landscape, hopefully, on these topics, or topics that are applicable to this funding call. And those sort of 3 main points are going to be really the focus of today's session. There's also going to be the chance, hopefully, for you to network a little bit and see who else is in the room. And then the second day on Thursday, the focus of that is really on giving you an opportunity to network and to generate initial ideas, which could go on to form an application to our expression of interest stage, but they don't have to. So there's no obligation for you to do an application because you've been here. And similarly, you don't have to have been here at the event to put in an application to us. So we're not sort of precious about your ideas, and you're not locked in by being here. So don't panic about that. I'm not sure whether is Tim back in the room with us? Yes, amazing. In that case, I'll pass back over to you, Tim.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Oli, and hello everyone. My apologies for being a fraction late. I was actually here an hour early, and right at the very last moment, Zoom crashes on me. These things happen, and actually that's a really good point to bring up here. This is not a performance that we have rehearsed and can put on for you. It's a live event, and it may well be a situation for you where you have, hopefully Zoom won't crash for you, but if you have cats that need to crawl across your camera, or children that need to be fed and things like that, please make yourselves at home, and don't panic about those things. This is how we work when we're online sometimes. Anyway, I am your facilitator for today and on Thursday as well. I'm an independent facilitator, so I'm not a part of the Dunhill Medical Trust or any other funding council. I've been running these sorts of events for many years as an independent facilitator. So my job, I think, is to make sure we get through lots of conversations, lots of presentations, lots of guest speakers. Hopefully we get through those in good time for you to have a quality understanding of what this call is about, but also an opportunity to do some thinking as well, some thinking on your own and some thinking with other people. So my job will be to bang the drum. I'll be keeping an eye on things. I'll be asking you to have a conversation and then interrupting you and saying, right, that's enough of that conversation because we need to move on to the next thing. I'll look after the process for you. Generally speaking, at these sorts of events, I don't know if we've talked about social media or anything, but generally speaking, at these sorts of events, if you are a social media orientated person, normally we're very happy for you to talk about what you're engaged with at the moment. But if you could avoid talking about specific ideas at this stage, that would be really useful, because obviously we're working together towards some ideas over the next few days. But so talk about the process by all means, shout that out loudly to the world, but specific ideas, specific people, specific points, maybe you can avoid talking about those sorts of things publicly at this stage. That would be useful. We will be using some breakout rooms. Just so you know, I'm sure all of us are very used to using breakout rooms. We'll be asking you to do lots of listening. We'll be asking you to do lots of thinking. There's opportunities to do some talking as well, but also be asking you to write some notes. There will be some collaborative notes that will be asked to take. But I strongly suggest you also keep a little notebook on the side for taking your own notes, because throughout the course of these 2 days, you may hear someone speak, or you may see someone's profile somewhere and you think, I'd like to talk to that person a bit more. Maybe there's a connection we should be making with each other. So you might be wanting to write some side notes as we go through this, with the intention, of course, of potentially you might want to put an application in, or a proposal forward with some potential collaborators here. And you may not know it yet, but there's a high chance as you look across the windows, the Zoom windows here, your new best friend forever may be sitting in here amongst these people here, and you don't know that yet. So it's very exciting. This is like you should feel like excited, like you're in a sweet shop, and all these people are there for you to sort of possibly take and become collaborators for the future. Now, that said, it's very useful if, where you can, you have your camera on. Because if we're trying to make connections with each other, it's really useful to have a camera on so we can see each other. But I understand that we can't always do that. So, of course, use that appropriately. And likewise, when other people are talking, it's useful to be muted, just so then when the kids come in or the cat comes across his keyboard or whatever it might be, it just keeps the noise down while the speakers are speaking. All right, so enjoy the process. Relax into it. Lots of listening, bit of talking, and lots of writing is what we're expecting of you. So I'm going to pass it back to Oli now, who's going to dig in a little bit deeper into the funding call. But again, you might want to take some notes as we go through this, because we'll have a little bit of a Q&A after this for you to ask Oli and Sanjay directions. But of course, the chat window as well, you might want to be adding some questions into there as we go through, and we'll see if we can fend those for you as when we come out at the end of Oli's presentation. Oli.
Yes, hello. Okay, let me reshare my screen again, and let me know if this is working.
Yep, looking good.
Lovely, I've got some thumbs up.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
Excellent. All right, hello again. Hopefully you're not already bored of my voice. This is going to be probably not the most thrilling presentation, but it might be the bit that you're all here for, which is I'm effectively going to give a bit of a step through of the core criteria and the sort of process and the timelines involved. And I'm also going to try and answer some of the questions that we received in advance under each of these headings. So thanks so much anyone who asked a question in advance. We've tried to cover as many as possible here. Just to say as well in advance that all of the information, or pretty much all of the information I'm going to tell you, will be in the call guidelines, which will be published on our apply for funding page when the call is open. And I can't really stress it enough, please read the guidelines before you go on to make an application, because they do contain pretty much all of the information that you need. But hopefully this gives you a bit of an overview now so that you know what to expect. So I'm going to start with who can apply to the scheme. So the principal investigator, or the lead applicant as it's sometimes known, must be based at a UK university or an eligible research organisation. I just want to highlight something now, which is that if you are currently a lead applicant on a research grant from us, a current existing grant from us, or you're a co-applicant on 2 or more grants from us, then you might not be able to apply as lead applicant to this scheme. So if you think that applies to you or you're not sure, please get in touch with us directly and we'll try and resolve that for you as quickly as possible, because it's not always totally black and white. So it's probably easier just to deal with that outside of this session, if that makes sense. We very much welcome applications from first-time or early career lead applicants. And if that's the case, then we would expect to see more established or more experienced co-applicants, and also to see a plan for mentoring and support which is articulated within the application. Someone asked a question around whether we welcome co-investigators and co-applicants, and the short answer is absolutely. So we welcome co-applicants and collaborators both from within and outside academia. So that could include people with lived experience, which is relevant to the proposal. It could include people from charity partners. It could include community organisations or industry or commercial organisations as well. And as I've already mentioned, where appropriate, we're looking for teams to be taking a multidisciplinary approach. So the summary really is that we're quite flexible as to who can be involved in these applications. We also received a question actually around whether we'd accept a proposal from a lead applicant with no traditional track record in hearing or vision research. And again, the answer is in principle, yes, but we'd be looking for that expertise to come from elsewhere in the team. So, really what we're trying to say here is you need to tell us who's involved and why you are the most suitable team or a suitable team to be answering the questions that you're trying to answer. We're trying not to put too many limits on who can be involved. It's up to you to really justify the proposed team. In terms of research topics, you've already seen these, so this is just a refresher. So a reminder that proposals must address at least one of these topics to be eligible, and also remember that it must fit within the overall theme of the call. So it has to have that focus on age-related hearing and or vision, and it also has to have that focus on testing and or scaling up healthcare technologies. Just to say here that you can address multiple research topics or you can address just one. We don't have a preference for either of those, and we're not prioritizing any one of these research topics over the other. And relatedly, we don't have a preference for proposals which are just targeting hearing or just targeting vision, or we're taking a multi-sensory approach. So again, we're not prioritizing any one of those options over the others. So again, it's really about, the call is designed to enable you to apply for a range of topics and a range of approaches. And it's really about telling us what you want to do, why it's important, how you're going to go about doing it, and why you're the best people to do that. It's a similar message really in terms of award type and duration. So I know lots of people have asked for more information in terms of what type of award they can apply for, how long and how much. And again, we've tried to give you some flexibility here. So there are some limits, but in general, we're trying to take a flexible approach. So here you can see there's listed 4 example award types that you could apply for. And again, all of this information will be in the guidelines. So here we've got proof of concept or seed funding grants, a project grant, a single PhD studentship, that could be clinical or non-clinical, and a postdoctoral fellowship. And with each of these, we provided indicative durations and budgets. So I'm not going to read all of this information out. Just in response to a question I've seen in the chat, we will be sharing all of the slides from today, so you don't feel that you have to take notes on all of this. But for example, project grant, we've got here indicative duration up to 3 years and indicative budget up to 400,000. Again, we're not prioritizing any one award type over the other. So, really think about what mechanism suits what you want to do and articulate why that is. And I also want to stress the word indicative. So these amounts are provided as a guide, and we are open to requests that exceed these. You just need to justify why the amount that you're asking for and the duration that you're asking for. Like I said, we're not prioritizing any one award type, but I do just want to highlight that there's a few award types that are not eligible. So this scheme is not designed to support large program style grants. So what we're looking for really are quite discrete, focused research questions or a set of research questions, rather than a sort of large program of different projects happening at the same time, if that makes sense. Also not eligible are multiple PhD studentship applications, and the reason for that is that we actually have a separate scheme for multiple PhD studentships at the Trust, and that the current round of that scheme is actually open at the moment. So if that's something that interests you or interests your organisation, then I'd advise you to take a look at our apply for funding page, and we've got full details of that. I think that scheme is currently open until late July. Maybe Gordon can give me a nod. Yes, he's nodding, so I'm on the right track. So that's a separate scheme, so not eligible under this scheme. And then finally, project grants which have a PhD student or a students embedded within them are also not eligible. So I just want to make that clear now, just so that that's all okay for everybody. In terms of eligible costs, again, we're going to have pretty extensive guidance about this in the core guidelines, so I don't want to give a sort of blow-by-blow account, but I do just want to highlight a few key points at this stage. So broadly, we don't meet overhead costs for research organisations. However, if you have a community partner or partners involved in your proposal, then we would expect their work, their contribution to the work, to be reimbursed at their full economic cost. So that would include overhead costs. So hopefully that distinction is nice and clear. We will cover directly incurred salary costs. So for example, researchers employed on the grant will cover those salary costs. And we're very supportive of employed researchers being named as co-investigators if they're doing a substantive amount of the work. The one thing just to make sure is that any salary costs that you're applying for aren't covered by another funding source. So for example, we won't provide salary costs for somebody who's already tenured, for example. Relatedly, if you're a first time or you're an early career principal investigator and you're applying without tenure at your institution, then you should be eligible to apply for your salary costs. If that's the case, then just be aware that if you get through to the second stage, you'll be asked to provide a letter of support from your institution that just confirms that they're happy to extend your contract by the length of the grant if you are successful. So you don't need to worry about that now. It's just to make it clear for the future. And we had a very valid question actually asked in advance around whether you could include PPI, so patient care and public involvement costs, in your budgets, and relatedly whether you could include costs for things like, you know, in the context of this scheme, BSL signers, something like that, potentially, to make those sort of events more accessible. And again, the general answer is yes. So we're supportive of you including PPI, EDI, impact-related, career development costs, etc., in your budget, as long as they're justified and they're relevant to the work that you're looking to do. And obviously, you know, things like the accessibility of those events would also have a role to play in the sort of consideration of EDI aspects as well. So we're supportive of those costs being included as long as they're justified. And there will be various sections of the application form that will sort of prompt you to talk about those costs and how you've considered them as well. Just again, in terms of the sort of mechanics of how the scheme works, at the expression of interest stage, you're going to be asked to upload a financial summary alongside your application. You can provide this in whatever format suits you best. The key thing that we're looking for is that it sort of outlines the costs that you're including, and it shows that it demonstrates that you've thought about what you're looking to do and that the activities that you're proposing are adequately resourced. So hopefully that just gives you a sense of what we're expecting at the first stage of the process when you come to apply. And then finally, I'd just like to run through the application process and the timeline. So you might have got a sense already that this is a two-stage funding call. And the first stage, which is the expression of interest stage, is opening next Monday, so not long away, on the 12th of June, and will then be closing about 6 weeks later on the 21st of July. To make an application at this stage, you're going to be asked to complete an application form, which is on our online grants management portal. And you'll also be asked to submit a short video. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the video now, but the guidelines will provide details of what that's expected to cover and how you can send that to us. Those applications will then be assessed internally, and you'll find out whether you've been successful in early September 2023. The guidelines are going to include details of the assessment criteria for both stages, but just to say that the first stage assessment criteria is quite heavily focused on those principles for research that I outlined in my earlier presentation, which is why I just outlined them earlier. So if you're successful, you'll be asked to submit a full application with a deadline of the 20th of October. I just want to make it clear now that if you're not successful at that first stage, you'll receive the sort of detailed but generic feedback, which is the feedback that we publish on our website. And I've included a link at the bottom of this slide, so it's quite a small link, but hopefully you'll be able to see it when we circulate the slides afterwards. So that's the feedback that we publish on our website that was for a previous funding call that we ran. You'll hopefully have got the sense that we're quite a small team and we're expecting quite a large number of applications. So it's just not feasible, unfortunately, for us to provide individual feedback at this stage. So it's not that you don't provide feedback, it's receive feedback, it's just that it won't be individualized. And I just want to make that clear now, just so that everyone knows what to expect. Full applications will all be externally peer reviewed, and you'll then have the opportunity to respond to sort of key points of the peer reviewers' feedback, and that will be in that week commencing 11th of December 2023. So hopefully that'll all be out the way before Christmas, so you don't have to worry about it too much while you're on your holidays. And then applications will be assessed by our Research Grants Committee and the expert panel, and decisions on funding made in early February 2024, and we'll then hope to notify you of the outcome by around mid-March 2024. So just worth keeping in mind that, you know, we're trying to let you know by mid-March 2024. So probably realistically, the earliest that any of these projects could start would be springtime 2024. We're quite flexible as to when grants start. We typically ask for them to start within 12 months of you receiving your offer, but just to make you aware that, you know, that's probably realistically the earliest that they could get started. So I think that is hopefully a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the funding call. I'm going to again pass back to Tim. As Tim said, me and Sanjay are now going to be around for a bit of a Q&A session. So thanks to anyone who's put questions in the chat already, but if you have any others, then this is your chance to ask those now. So back to you, Tim.
Well, thank you. You're very clear.
So I think Tim is having some technical difficulties on his side. So the good thing is that we're all co-hosts, so we can just all seamlessly take over. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or put your hand up here and I will help guide to whoever's best in the team to answer them. We've already got one question in the chat. Are commercial collaborators welcomed in applications? Oli.
Yes, I think would be the short answer. So yeah, so co-applicants or collaborators from commercial organisations or from industry definitely welcome. And again, there'll be space in the application form, both application forms, to sort of outline the suitability of the team and why those people have been involved. But yeah.
Oli, I'm back with you now. Apologies for that.
That's okay.
So questions from people. I can't see the chat here right now, but if anybody has questions, they want to raise their hand, either physically or with your reaction button, you will see questions pop up there on the screen. Questions about the call, the mechanics of it, the numbers, what's in scope, what's out of scope. Any questions from anybody?
So I'll try and cover a few of these, and again, Oli and Gordon, pitch in when you can. So do we have a broad number of grants that we want to award? So the overall envelope is around £2 million. We may have a bit more money if there's applications, proposals of suitably high quality, but I guess it's just a case of the funding cutoff and the maths with the grants that we receive. So yeah, the 2 million is the funding pot available. And then, can you be involved in multiple proposals? Yes, you may be involved in multiple proposals. However, we do have rules around, as Oli had mentioned earlier, around if you're already a PI on one of our active awards, then you should get in touch, or if you're already involved in multiple awards that we have already awarded as a co-applicant. And that can also apply in terms of prospective applications that you're applying to. So, you know, be prepared if they are funded, then we do have certain rules on the number of applications you can be involved in. So then I guess that sort of helps answer, can a person be a lead on more than one application? So there again, they will be in competition with each other effectively, and we won't allow you to be a PI on more than one application with us anyway. Oli, have you managed to scan the chat for any quick ones that you can answer, or shall I throw some?
Yeah, so we've got one here around, can we apply for funding for the final 2 years of a 3-year PhD project, which is starting this autumn? So the answer to that would be no. So we don't provide funding to for projects or for PhD fellowships that have already started or already been awarded effectively. So these need to be sort of new pieces of research, if that makes sense.
And I can see we've got Chris. Maybe Chris first, if you're okay to unmute.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sorry if I missed this in Oli's overview. I just wondered, there's the point at which you mentioned about fellowship interviews, if deemed necessary by the panel. I just wondered if you, and sorry if you have said, but if not, if you could say a bit more about what that might, what that means, deeming necessary. Yeah,
so effectively, you know, as you know, a postdoctoral fellowship is quite a prestigious award, and it's a personal award. So there's quite a big focus on, as you would expect, on sort of the individual as well as the project, probably more so than with a traditional project grant, which sometimes doesn't come through as well in a written application, if that makes sense. So, you know, a written application tends to give a good overview of the project, but possibly less so of the person. So we're envisaging that for postdoctoral fellowships, the panel might say that, you know, in principle, this is worthy of funding, but we'd like to do an interview just to check that the person is also, you know, worthy of this fellowship award. So that's the reason for putting it in there. And obviously, we'll try and get the dates confirmed for that as soon as possible once we knew whether there are potentially fellowship applications that might go through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Stephen, hi.
Yeah, hi, thanks for that. I expect the answer to this one is that it depends. So I represent an SME that does work in diagnostics for visual health, but with an association with the university. So I'm interested in what kind of proportion potentially would an SME be able to get from a grant like this. Let's say we're looking at doing a project, not a PhD, but a project based, led by the UK. Can you give any guidance to how the SME could be involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably am broadly going to give you the answer you expected, which is it depends. We don't have a set figure. You know, we're not going to say, oh, you can only have 50% of the funding. Really, it's about saying what you need and justifying why that is. But you know, I think we're open to, you know, if that's people time at your organization, then that's something that would be open to. If it's particular testing that you would be doing, then it's something that we're open to. So we don't have sort of set yes and no's in terms of what you can apply for. It's really about saying what you need and why you're best placed to do it, as opposed to the kind of university partner.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that.
If it helps, then I think we could say, you know, in the past, we've had previous funding calls in the past where there has to be a community organisation partner, and we've had sort of salary costs included in that, as well as you know, more sort of running costs as well. So it's kind of open as long as it can be justified, and it's relative to what's being proposed.
Right, and I
see there are a couple of questions. Go ahead,
a
Sanjay.
couple of questions in the chat there. So I guess, Oli, here's a question. Is the call's focus on applied or fundamental research, or seeks a balance? So I know you touched on that in your presentation. Yeah,
so like I said, really, what we're definitely looking for is proposals that are doing more than just looking at the underpinning mechanisms. So I think, you know, the overall theme of the call has that focus on healthcare technologies, and it's about testing and or scaling up. So that we would want to see an element of testing and or scaling up. So that could be, I should have mentioned as well, that could be new technologies, or it could be existing technologies. So there can be developing and testing, or it could be taking something which is an existing technology and sort of scaling it up, or looking at it in a new context. So I think in that sense, it probably lends itself more to an applied focus. That's not to say that there can't be aspects of fundamental research in there as well, but applications that are purely around the fundamental mechanisms of hearing and vision conditions wouldn't be eligible. I don't know, Sanjay, whether you want to add anything, or whether that
no. So I guess the focus is on healthcare technologies and applying that to older people and hearing and vision. And I guess a related question there, are there any stipulations regarding IP, obviously given the topic, and Gordon has helpfully shared a link to our sample IP agreement, so you can see the kind of policies we have around intellectual property. Shall we have a look at some more questions?
Yeah.
So if applying for a fellowship, can you include co-applicants and partners? Oli?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would expect at least one of the co-applicants to be sort of your primary sponsor if you're applying for a postdoctoral fellowship. So the lead applicant should be the prospective fellow, and we'd expect the sponsor to be one of the co-applicants, but otherwise, yeah, the same rules apply in terms of we're very open in terms of other co-applicants and collaborators and partners.
And I guess a slightly related question for a principal investigator who's an early career researcher: can the principal investigator and the mentorship, I guess, team be from different organizations, or are there constraints around this? So I think it's fairly related, and I'll let you answer, Oli, but hopefully we're on the same page.
Yeah, you're probably seeing me nodding, so I think we're on the same page. But yeah, again, there's no constraints around that. We're open to you being from a different institution as your mentor. I guess again, it would be up to you to justify why that is, and why that mentor is best placed to provide that role.
And again, is there a maximum number of years after completing a PhD within which one can apply for a postdoctoral position or personal fellowship?
No, again, no, we don't have a sort of set, I know some organizations say, you know, early career is X number of years after PhD, or postdoctoral fellowship is within X number of years of completing a PhD, but we don't have a personal limit. Obviously, the panel who assess your proposal would be sort of looking and thinking about, you know, are you right for it? But again, that's up to you to make that case. There's no set limit.
And then I guess a related question on limits is there a limit on the number of applications from a single university?
No, again, yeah, so as Sanjay said, so can't be the PI on more than 2 applications from us, but we're open for multiple applications from the same institution.
And so I guess touching on what you just mentioned there, so can a person apply for a fellowship but also be part of another application, say a research project grant, as a co-applicant?
Yes, yeah, I think taking into account everything else we said earlier, in terms of obviously if you know that you're already a lead or a co-applicant on existing grants from us, then that might be a slightly different case, so get in touch. But if you're coming at this completely fresh, then yeah, that's fine.
So I think we've covered it. So
missed, yeah.
Unless anyone else has any other questions or I've missed any, then I can hand over to Tim.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, my internet keeps dropping me out. I've got all sorts of backup things happening to it, so apologies for it disappearing here and there. Yes, are there any other questions that we need? I'm guessing that Oli and Sanjay, you're available by email and things like that if people have ideas, thoughts after today, of course. But it's we thought that today would be a useful point for a community to ask questions if indeed they needed those. All right. Well, thank you very much for those questions. Oh, hang on a minute. I see that NGC2 has just asked about what are the backgrounds of reviewers.
Yeah, I can take that one. So it depends. Obviously, there's various stage of the application process and various review stages as well. So like I said, at the first stage, that is internally reviewed by us at the Trust. And again, like I said, the focus is more on the research principles rather than the sort of science methodology, if that makes sense. At the full stage, so it's there's sort of two stages of review. So the first stage is external peer review. So again, quite hard to say what would be the backgrounds of the reviewers. We obviously we use international peer review, and we will pick reviewers who have sort of suitable expertise to review whichever applications come in. Similarly with the second stage, so that is a combination of members of our research grants committee, so you can find their details on our website, and actually we'll link to them. Oh, Sanjay's put them in the chat. He's read my mind. Look at this. Perfect. So you can see our research grants committee there. They will all be present at the meeting, but not all of them will be scoring applications. So they'll only be asked to sort of formally assess applications if they have relevant expertise. And they'll be supplemented by external independent experts. So we have a sort of co-opted expert panel who will come in and assess applications. So again, at the moment, we can't give exact details. We will make that decision once we know the applications that we've got. If you are interested in seeing, for example, on the news section of our website, whenever we confirm all of the applications from previous grant rounds, we put out a news item which says the success rates, and it also says who was involved in the decision-making process, and we would take the same approach with this funding call, just so that it's transparent who was involved at each of the stages.
So touching on that, actually, you can see the type of awards that we have funded in the past, looking at those news items, because I do remember that was a question from the previous survey.
Yeah.